people thought Thunderbolts was going to be a joke when this movie was first announced, but it turns out that this movie has the level of emotional depth that we have not seen since Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Welcome back, everyone. We're here today to talk about Thunderbolts, asterisk. This is a movie that I just saw, and also a heads up, we are going to be getting into spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, and you want to avoid spoilers, maybe watch my spoiler-free review, which also is up. You can probably click it somewhere over here. There'll be a card. But for this one, we will be talking about that, so we're going to jump into it. But before we jump into my thoughts on the movie, which I have a lot, and yes, I did dress up as Black Widow to go see it, we are going to be talking about a synopsis, a little plot summary, if you will. So what is this movie about? Well, it's really about following Yelena, who we might know as White Widow, and she is super depressed. She's kind of looking for a purpose in life, and while she's searching for this, she ends up coming together with a bunch of other anti-heroes, wannabe heroes, who are also feeling pretty broken and are kind of on this not so great path. And they team up to take down someone that they've all actually at one time or another worked for, which is Valentina Allegra de Fontaine. Try saying that 10 times fast. So they all team up to take her down because it turns out she has cracked the code to make her own super soldier, who might actually be the most powerful super soldier we've ever seen, because it's Sentry, which is Bob or Robert Reynolds, who also has a darker side to him. So when our team gets together and they go to square off with Valentina, they realize they're really no match for the Sentry. It turns out all they can do really is just punch and shoot. So, you know, it doesn't go great, that fight, but then it gets even worse when this ultimately ends up unlocking the Void. Void is an extremely powerful villain, and it is in this showdown with the Void that our team really comes together, also deals with a lot of their own personal stuff, as like I said, they're all broken. And at the end of the movie, we finally see the formation of the team, who is now not Thunderbolts, which by the way is a name that they get from Yelena's Pee Wee soccer team, which I kind of love that that's the origin of the Thunderbolts name in the MCU. Instead, they are known as the New Avengers. And that is pretty much the movie. There's also a mid-credit scene that is kind of like a little funny scene, and then a post-credit scene that alludes to the Fantastic Four. But we'll talk about that more in our review. So let's talk about the actual review. I want to start off with the action in this movie, because the action, I really loved it. It kind of blew my mind. There's a whole sequence with Bucky when he is chasing after these armored vehicles. He's basically going after as well. Alexei's driving his weird limo, and he's got everyone in there. All of the Thunderbolts are in there with him, and Bucky is tracking them down, and he just takes out these armored vehicles and then ends up getting to them. And you saw this one probably in the trailer where they're all celebrating like, oh my gosh, yay, it's Winter Soldier, he helped us. And then he takes them out too, and he plans to basically take them in after that and turn them in, because he's also trying to get Valentina, which is why he's kind of gone a little rogue here and become the Winter Soldier again. Guess he's not going to be a congressman anymore, because I don't think you can do both of those things. But that whole sequence is just really, really amazing. And I would say also the fight that we get with all of them gathered together in kind of like the bunker. They're basically all sent into this bunker to take each other out, not knowing that that's what's happening. They believe they all got kind of like a final mission from Val. Also, I gotta say, whenever anyone gives you a final mission, if you're in a movie, you know something's about to go down. That final mission either means you're gonna die, or final mission means like everything's about to go sideways. And in this case, kind of both of those things happen. I mean, they all end up fighting each other because it turns out that they're all each other's marks in this warehouse, in this room where everything is about to be incinerated. That's all the evidence that Valentina is trying to destroy, because she is about to be impeached. And so she's trying to like scrub clean everything that could come up in this investigation by setting it all on fire. And these people are part of that. But while they're having the fight, we get to see all their kind of different styles and ways that they fight. I love US Agent's use of the shield as well. I love his shield. I love that it's all just a black shield that he made like himself. I think that's such a cool element of the character. And my favorite thing is that they really do take the time to think about the fighting styles of each of these characters. Now, the only person that I feel like is not done well here is Taskmaster. And Taskmaster also gets killed like right off the bat. So kind of makes sense that they wouldn't really do justice to Taskmaster because they just wanted to take that character out clearly. Whether that's to show that people can die or just because they wanted to tie up that loose end of what to do with Taskmaster. And the answer is they don't know what to do with Taskmaster, so they just killed her off. I'm not sure. Or it could have had to do with fans not liking that Taskmaster was changed in the movie in Black Widow. I don't know, but I do feel Taskmaster was undersold here. Didn't get a lot of opportunity to show off how cool they are, especially when you think of how that character is presented in Black Widow. But anyways, other than that, I would say every other character is really done justice. And the action shows that. It's exciting, it's deep, and there's a lot going on with it. It's very dynamic. I also gotta say, like, we have so many amazing performers in this movie. It's insane to me. We have Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who plays Valentina, and I really love that Julia's really bringing it in this movie. Also, Julia looks strong in this movie. She jacked. But they just basically let her do her Veep thing, I feel like, and it works really well for the character. So I was really glad to see her in this. I was really glad that she gets to play that villain role. She kind of also plays a little bit of like a Norman Osborn role almost, kind of trying to create her own team to replace the Avengers, or her own person to replace the Avengers, that then she kind of PR rolls into her team of new Avengers, which is the Thunderbolts rebranded, but now they're working with Valentina. I loved all of those elements, and I'm also glad that she didn't get locked up at the end, because selfishly, I want to see more of her because I just like her character. She's so fun. But she wasn't my favorite character in the movie, and although you would think that that might even be Yelena, because I do love Florence Pugh, and I do love Yelena, and I am dressed as Black Widow, and that's my little sister. But my favorite character was actually Sentry. I gotta say, I just love Bob. I love the approach they took to this character. I think that the way he's portrayed, it's just so well done. Pullman does such a good job as Bob, and like, he's just kind of a heartbreaking character. There's a moment where he is talking to Yelena, who takes him aside after he gets into some beef with John Walker, with US Agent there. And he basically says, you know, maybe you should just leave me here because you guys would get out of this bunker, this base, like faster without me. And she's like, no, we can't do that because if we leave you here, like, you'll die. And he's like, yeah, no, I think you should just leave me here. I think that would be better for everyone. And it's just so sad. He does it in such a way that's so earnest and so kind of like timid. I don't know. There's something really like beautiful and broken about Bob that I just love. And you know, they didn't skimp on the character's origins either. Like, he does get to be an addict. We do get into his tragic past and how that shaped him. So I like that they just let that exist. The whole part with him having to go back into his mind and fight him when he was flipping a sign as a chicken for like a fried chicken place. That part, I just was like, I can't believe we just went there and we just did this. And he's like, oh yeah, at the time, like, I was on something, I don't even know if I can say it on YouTube. That's how intense it was. Although this movie is PG, guys. What the heck? But beyond just Bob, I mean, they also did Sentry so well. Like, when he becomes Sentry, when he's in the suit, when he has the blonde, long hair, they nailed it. The belt, the S, the costume. The costume is like, mwah. As a Sentry fan, I gotta say, I am so happy with this. And you know what? It's actually made me, I might have to, this month for my Patreon, I have a comic book club, and I think one of the options I'm going to put up for the poll over there has got to be the original, the Sentry run, because I just love that original story with the Sentry. And although we don't get into the elements of the Sentry that, you know, he's the most powerful hero that the world forgot, they do even find a way to weave that into the character, because he also seems to have some really intense memory problems, which might come from his substance abuse. I'm not sure, but there's definitely something going on there where he, you know, will have these shifts and then be like, but I don't really remember what happened there. And I just love how that's even kind of incorporating the time that the world was kind of made to forget about Sentry, because you have to forget about Sentry because then they found out the Void was also connected to Bob. And so Void and Sentry are the same person. And so you can't have one without the other. So in order to get rid of Sentry, the solution was to basically make the world forget, including Bob, that the Sentry existed. And in so doing, the Void also is removed. And it's kind of a similar solution here. At the end of the movie, we see that once we defeat the Void, there's this idea that Bob actually can't really become the Sentry again, because if he does, there's a chance that Void will come back. Speaking of Void, let's talk about the villain of this movie for a moment, because the villain of this movie being Void, and also to a lesser extent Valentina, I feel like was just such a great choice. I wish that it had been a surprise. I am sad that the trailer gave it to us. I was theorizing that Void was going to be in the film before we got it in the trailer, but then once we got it in the trailer, I was like, oh, okay, I was right. But also, like, I wish that would have been a reveal, because that would have been so cool in the theater to be like, oh my gosh, we're doing Void. That's crazy. I also love their interpretation of Void in this movie. The way that we see it is, we talk about this idea, even at the beginning of the film, like the first line I think that Yelena says is she talks about this void within herself. And so Void, it doesn't just represent a void or this sadness that sits within Bob, this darkness within Bob, but it actually represents kind of sadness in everyone. And the way that Void works is he can kind of tap into all of the depression things in your life, all of the low points in your life, and just make that manifest and trap you in your own living hell. Basically, you're trapped in all of your worst memories, which go on a loop through these rooms that you get trapped in, and you can't die. You just have to relive that pain again and again and again. That's horrifying. I will not deny that I was a little bit disappointed when everybody started turning into shadows, that we didn't get to see Void like messing people up, because he is such a brutal character, or can be in the comics. But I do think that this really fit well with the themes, because clearly, what is this movie about? This movie is about mental health. And I think that that is also such a great theme to have here, because when you have a character like Sentry, it is so important to who that character is, the depression, the addiction, all those things that Bob suffers with, that makes him a very interesting character, because it's basically like, what if you had Superman, but you know, Superman was really messed up, because the thing is with Clark Kent over in DC Comics with Kal-El is that he is a very like balanced, very like well-rounded, good person. So when you take someone who maybe is outside of that sphere, who's different, what kind of hero do you get? And it also talks a little bit about that idea of like, that's why you shouldn't necessarily just make those people in, you know, trials become heroes, because it might not be as well suited to it. But what I really love about this approach is that it makes the character so human. I mean, it makes a lot of these characters, the reason that I think Thunderbolts really sings is because these are all very human characters. They are characters with flaws. They're not your typical heroes, and that's what I love about it. They're just a group of losers. Is 2025 the year of the loser? Because, I mean, a Minecraft movie's focusing on losers, although, you know, not necessarily doing it as well as this movie is, I think. This movie's about losers. I love movies that are about losers. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. They're some of my favorites. And the other thing is that while we're dealing with the depression, it's not just Bob that gets these moments. Yelena gets these moments. John gets these moments. Ghost, to a lesser extent, gets a couple moments as well. I feel like there's a lot that people are working through in this film, and it also continues the emotional journey of some characters that we've been following for a while, like Bucky. Bucky obviously had Falcon and the Winter Soldier that happened. We saw him in Captain America Brave New World, and I really feel like it's been continuing the trajectory for him. Actually, I feel like Brave New World was kind of just a repeat for him a little bit of like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but this movie feels like it's actually progressing. And now he's kind of come full circle, because I think he's gone from like superhero to like congressman to like we're back to being kind of a hero again, because he needs to be. The world needs him, all right? Get that arm out of the dishwasher, put it on, and get back out there, Bucky. That's what I say. There's some great emotional moments, especially between Alexei and Yelena, that made me really want to go back and watch Black Widow, because although that movie is not perfect, there are really a lot of amazing emotional moments. And what I love about that film is kind of similar to what I like about this film. It's just a really good ensemble piece. There's so many characters that seeing how they interact together is what makes the film enjoyable. And seeing that bond once again, that sort of father-daughter bond that we have between Red Guardian and White Widow here is, I don't know, it just really hit me. It's really touching. There's that part that David Harbour as Red Guardian, he gives Yelena this whole speech about how, to him, like, he doesn't see her losses. He doesn't see her flaws. He only sees, like, the goodness in her. He sees the kindness in her. And yes, she's done a lot of bad things, but she's a good person. It's not necessarily about all the bad things you've done in life. It's just about, like, who you are as a person and what you're doing now. And I loved that as a story for Yelena, but for so many people here. I mean, I like that these characters are also sometimes just not likable. I really like John in this because he's such a jerk the whole time for most of it, and I just love that. At one point, Yelena even calls him out and just like basically says that he is trash. Like, and he's just like, wow, okay, ouch. But I think that while we have a lot of laughs, there's a lot of heart in this movie. There's a lot of things that you can connect with as a person and feel seen. I mean, I'm sure we've all been going through some dark times right now. I know I personally have been going through dark times just with everything happening in the world. And I kind of see a film where you get heroes who are also feeling that, who also feel lost, who also feel a lack of purpose in their life and don't know what to do, who feel emptiness, who feel that void. I don't know, it's really uplifting. It is really inspiring because it just reminds me that, like, we all have each other, we're all going through it together, and at the end of the day, like, we are not alone. You feel really alone when you're depressed, but there are other people, it's not unique. There are other people out there that are experiencing that, and that's why it's so important that we stay connected. And I think especially in a time where we have the internet, which while it gives us the idea of connection, is not, I think, true connection, is not getting out and being physically in a place with somebody. I think it is very important for us to remind people that, you know, there are other people out there and there are people that you can talk to, and it's important to connect with people in your life. I think, you know, physically connect, like be in a spot with somebody, go out, have a coffee, go to the park, walk in the sunshine, touch the grass. These things are important. The other thing I like about the comedy is not only is the comedy really good in this movie and really funny, probably because these actors are also amazing. They can do the emotional stuff, they can do the comedy really well, but the comedy never feels like it's taking away from the emotion. And I think that's also in part because of the nuance of these actors. These actors are so good at keeping things grounded and so good at just like playing with those lines. And there aren't also a lot of moments I found where an emotional moment is undercut by humor. Sometimes humor does follow an emotional moment, but for the most point, I found a lot of these emotional moments were kind of pushed forward by, we got to do a thing in the plot. And speaking about some of that plot, let's talk about the climax of this movie. So the movie sort of hits this climax when it's Thunderbolts, asterisk, versus Void. And Yelena, when everyone is running from Void, she just walks towards it, which I gotta say also feels very symbolic for where Yelena is at in her life, where she's been looking for this purpose and struggling to find it, and it's almost like she is walking in, she is kind of giving in a way, to the darkness. Although, you know, she is doing it to try to connect with Bob, to try to help Bob. It is someone that's hurting, seeing someone else hurting, trying to reach out for them, which is also such a powerful moment, I think. And of course, the rest of the team realizes that Yelena has disappeared in this way, and so they decide to go in after her because they figure something else might be going on in there. So they end up going in after her to see if there's a way that they could save her and that they could stop all this and also, you know, help Bob as well. I think the idea of how people are trapped, I think all of that is just so well done. And I love the emotional deep dive that we go into with these different rooms and seeing what people are suffering with, these moments that they have to keep coming back to. And I gotta say, I feel like this is basically what Echo wanted to do, but it kind of botched it. It never really hit the mark for that emotional, mental health weight in terms of the resolution of the story, whereas Thunderbolts hit the nail on the head for me. I think they did it really well. Speaking of this story, I think the other thing that I like about this story is that while this is an individual film, this is a film where I feel like you could sit down and just enjoy the story for what it is. It also ties in really well to the MCU, and I think it takes from everything that has been built and also is trying to build some new stuff and build into new things. But the story also feels like it's very self-contained. It's kind of got a bit of a Winter Soldier vibe in the sense that you could sit down and just watch the movie, because the movie is also giving you all the stuff you need to know about who these characters are in it, in a way that doesn't feel like exposition. It does feel like it's just part naturally of the conversation. Also, there are some characters here who are getting to know each other, so it makes sense that they're sharing things about themselves, or that that's coming out and we're discovering who the characters are, because we're doing it alongside other people in the room. So it feels organic, it feels natural. And that was something I really liked about this movie, because it's not easy to do when you have a franchise that is this long running. And I know there's going to be a lot of people that haven't watched everything that you would need to watch to like have all of the history you need for these characters before this movie. I mean, so many things have happened. There's like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Black Widow, Wakanda Forever to a lesser extent is mixed in there. Just Hawkeye is also there. Like, there's so much that has been referenced recently even. Never mind even just Winter Soldier. He's been in so many things. I think Winter Soldier might have been in the most MCU projects to date. I'm not sure if that's true, but it feels that way. Someone fact check that. I am curious to know if you've watched the movie and you are not familiar with, some of the recent stuff, or there are blanks in sort of your MCU checklist, as it were. How did you find this movie? And did you find it easy to connect with these characters still and understand where they were coming from, even without all the context? Because I think it's going to do a really good job of doing that, but I obviously have watched like everything. So I can't really say verbatim that that's how it's going to be, because that's not my experience. I'm coming at this with obviously the bias of having watched everything, and I can't just unwatch it, So let me know if that is you. I'm very curious to see what your takeaways were from this film and how you felt about the characters and all that stuff. Oh my goodness, also Ant-Man. Ant-Man is also another thing you would want to watch, because Ghost is here. Oh my god, so many things. So the film also has these post-credits scenes, right? So I definitely have some theories as to where we could be going with some of these things. One of them is, I think it's interesting because we get this allusion in the post-credits scene with Winter Soldier, with Bucky, to the fact that he is maybe not in a great place with Sam. So we have our new Avengers, and it seems like in the near future, Sam is also going to be putting his own team together as Captain America of heroes. And so we're going to have Sam's Avengers, and we're going to have kind of Bucky's Avengers. I'm sure Alexei would want to say his Avengers, but I'm going to say Bucky's Avengers. And they're kind of deciding like who's the real Avengers. And it seems like Bucky and Sam are going to have a conversation that does not go well, which kind of was giving me a little bit of like Civil War II vibes, but obviously not Carol versus Tony. I don't think any of us would want that Civil War II from the comics, to be honest. But the other thing is that we also have this really cool moment, I think, in Time Runs Out, basically like right before Secret Wars, where we have Captain America versus Iron Man. Steve Rogers, I believe he's older at the time, versus Tony Stark, and they're fighting, they're duking it out. I won't get into the history of it, but that's what happens like right before everything goes to white. And I was thinking, what if that ends up being in this universe Bucky and Sam? And how heartbreaking would that be? Because I love that bromance. That's one of my favorite relationships in the MCU. So I'm like, no. Hopefully at the end of Secret Wars, if there is beef there, it gets dealt with by the end of Secret Wars. By the end of, Doomsday, and then I guess Doomsday was gonna probably lead into Secret Wars and all that stuff. Hopefully that gets rectified. Also, we have Fantastic Four's rocket showing up, and although we do see the Four on the rocket, which I gotta say, I was like, just show me the rocket, I don't need the Four, I already knew who it was. Films, they're like, let me hold your hand. I'm like, I don't need you to hold my hand. I know what I'm doing. But who is on the rocket is the question. Now, it could be the Fantastic Four, could be Doctor Doom, could be both Doctor Doom and the Fantastic Four. And I really feel like this builds into my theory of the fact that I think Galactus is going to be a red herring, and that although we are going to deal with Galactus and Silver Surfer, the real story is going to be about the incursions, which is kind of what I talked about in my reaction to the newest Fantastic Four trailer that I saw. If you haven't seen that, by the way. Make sure you check that out. We'll put a card here. I talk a lot about sort of where I think that film is going. And this seems to kind of tie into that with now the Fantastic Four are coming to this universe. Of course, it could be neither the Fantastic Four or Doom on the rocket. Maybe it could be someone totally different. Who knows? Sentry also is interesting because if we know we're heading towards Secret Wars and everything with Doomsday, and I think an important character that we don't have is Molecule Man. In the comics, Molecule Man is what powers God Emperor Doom to create the patchwork battle world in Secret Wars. And so I'm wondering if maybe Sentry is going to be that person. We did see that concept art, and in the concept art, I didn't know who that character was, but I believe they had long hair that was like tied up, and I thought maybe it could be Molecule Man just because of what was happening in the art. But now I'm thinking, what if Sentry's our Molecule Man? Because how are we going to introduce Molecule Man in such short a time without it being weird, right? So maybe Sentry, he's got a lot of power and he doesn't really want to use it, but maybe he could be a battery for Doom. I guess we'll see. Also, how is this gonna weave into Daredevil Born Again? Because season 1 just happened, and then all of the stuff that's happening in Thunderbolts happens pretty much in New York, a lot of it. So what is that gonna do for Fisk and his mayorship, and will that change anything? How much time will have passed? I guess we'll have to wait to season 2 to find out. Overall, I would give this one a 4 out of 5. I really liked this movie. I thought it was freaking amazing. But I do feel that there's just some stuff that was just like, could have been maybe a bit better. Like the music felt a little bit like basic, and I think the pacing, there was some stuff that needed a little bit more room to breathe and other stuff that maybe could have been cut. But I do think the runtime overall was great, and I do think the overall story was great. So there's a lot to love, but I think there's still just a little bit room for improvement. So it wasn't the best film for me, but very, very strong. I really, really enjoyed it. One of the best films I've seen this year for sure. Also, I just wanted to quickly shout out, I ran into some folks at the theater, and I just want to say thanks to the local people that are watching. Hello, those of you that are like in the same place as me. It's so lovely when I go out to see a superhero movie and I run into someone. So if you ever do see me like at a theater or out and you want to say hi, like I love when people say hi. So thanks for saying hi, and it was nice meeting you all, and I hope that you enjoyed the movie as much as I did. That's all I have for this one, friends. I'll see you next time, and until then, stay nerdy. Bye! And make sure you check out this. This was my thoughts on Daredevil Born Again, and if you wanted my thoughts on the full season, they are here for you.